Welcome to the It Matters podcast. I'm your host, Walter Perez, and let's dive in as we help you grow your mindset and elevate your leadership. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. I am so glad you're joining me today because I got a very special guest. Her name is Taya Alexander, and she's the Global Ministries Developer of the Momco Canada. Now, if you've never heard of Momco, we're going to dive into that, and you're in for a treat today. And Taya, thank you so much for joining me on this episode. Just in the short while that we've had some conversations, I'm so pumped and excited for where this is going to go. Thanks for coming on.
I'm happy to be here.
Oh, that's so good. And you know, for a while there, because my wife has been involved with Momco and for the last number of years, and that organization has impacted her great. And when I heard that you are a powerhouse volunteer with that organization, I thought we need to have a chat because I need to understand a little bit more on what you're all about, why you do. But before we get into that, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself? Because you do this as a volunteer, and so there's some more to you. So why don't you share with us?
Okay, well, I am first a wife and mother to three almost adult, two out of three are adults for my children. So I have a 19, 18, and 13-year-old kids. And I am a music teacher. I teach voice lessons is my full-time job. Also lots of different kinds of music lessons, but teaching voice is most of what I do, and performing and singing. So that's kind of the rest of what I do. And then I also have been involved with the Momco Canada since my first child was 3 months old. So he is now 19 and a half. So it's great.
Oh, that's so cool. And a lot, I know, and I would love to dive into Momco a bit more, because there's some out in the audience that might not actually understand a little bit of what the organization is and who is it for, and how you get involved. And I would love for you to just kind of walk us through that a little bit.
For sure. So the Momco, right now we're going through what we call a rebrand. We are rebranding the name, but we have been MOPS International for 50 years. And this year we are changing because MOPS stood for Mothers of Preschoolers. And though it described what we did 50 years ago, it's not the best description of what we do now. We are a mothers group, an international mothers group. We're in 104 countries. Wow. Bulk of the groups are meeting in the United States, but we do have very many groups starting all over the world. We have 75 French-speaking groups in Africa. We have groups cropping up in the Middle East. We have groups all through Europe, Australia, Asia, all through the world. And so what it is a group will have, a church will have a group that will be led by volunteers and by the church. And we kind of support the groups, and we have curriculum for those groups and all those things. So,
wow, like this is not a small-time organization, and I mean the numbers that you just gave us. It's like, no, this is doing some global impact, and it's very evident. Now, when you came across Momco at first, I mean, you were going in there as a participant. And so you didn't start as a volunteer. What kind of attracted you to that? Like, what were you hoping to get out of it?
My sister and I just had babies, but he was 3 months old, and we were looking for a group that we could bring our babies to. We were looking for something for our babies, and our church had a mom's group. And so we went in with wanting to have our babies, and we were shocked when we got there that they were like, well, let's take your baby from you. This group is for you. And of course, only having been a mother for 3 months, I didn't realize why I would need something for me. But it became evident very quickly. I know that on the way home from my first group, I got a speeding ticket because my spirits were lifted so high that I was so excited. There was women, and there was coffee, and there was conversation, and it was just really impactful for me. So I did continue just as a participant for those first few years.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. You know, lately on multiple episodes, I've been talking about the power of community, and it seems like a common theme that keeps coming up, whether you're a leader or not, or you're trying to do life, community is a big part. And I catch that very it's very evident that that's what you were attracted to, amongst probably a lot of other things in that. But it's amazing how, as human beings, we just crave community. Hey.
Absolutely. And there's something about motherhood that is, we are in such need of community in that time. We are isolated as mothers. It's very isolating. We're used to being out working or being out, and all of a sudden you're just at home with this baby who doesn't talk back to you, and your husband's
Right.
usually gone and supporting the family, and it can be a very lonely time, and you may or may not even have friends with children at that time when you first start your motherhood journey. So the Mom Co does stand for the mom community. And that really is our vision, that there's two pieces to the Mom Co vision. One is that no mother would mother alone. That's really important. And the second thing is we're creating spaces for women to bump into Jesus. And that's it.
Right.
So we are a faith-based organization
Right.
at its heart, but not necessarily a curriculum about faith. We are all things. We are providing mom support with building friendships, with personal growth, with marriage, with physical health, mental health, parenting, all kinds of topics, a full
Right.
spectrum of topics. Also with the coming from the perspective of faith, but not necessarily as coming up front with faith, if that makes sense. It's just kind of a core
Yeah.
of who we are, but not necessarily what we're not preaching.
Yeah, no, 100%. And being married to a woman that has actually attended Momco for years and different levels, because as you are aware, we have 5 children. So there's always been a lot of opportunities for my wife to get involved. But I have seen from the sidelines on the power behind what you guys are doing. I mean, you are resourcing moms, equipping them, encouraging them, and it's such a beautiful thing that you guys are presenting there. And I do like that what you just said about, it may be Jesus kind of focused, but you haven't created a community that is just around that. I mean, you have attracted moms from all areas of life, correct?
Absolutely. So depending on group to group to group, depending on who's leading it and kind of what their vision is for their individual group, the Momco does give you the ability to have your own vision for your group.
Yeah.
But in my experience, our group here in St. Albert Alliance here was oftentimes up to 75% non-church going members. They all felt very comfortable coming in. They did not feel like the spiritual content was pushy or confronting in any way. It was really easily take or leave what applies to you. And there was so much more that a mom could get out of that. But I did meet the closest friends of my life through that experience. And that's because we're not talking about the weather and superficial things. We're getting in there. We're talking about, the dirty stuff, about marriage and about parenting and the hard stuff and keeping each other accountable. And that's really, I think, where the friendships our lifetime friendships are made.
Ooh, I love that. If we want to experience some deeper community and we want to really get something out of that, we have to be authentic and be willing to go deep. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. And, in my experience, I'm going to lead this into our talk about leadership. In my experience, in order for the group to get there, in order for the women attending to get there, it starts with the leader, with the authenticity of a leader. The leader needs to be willing to say, hey, here's where I'm struggling. Hey, here's what I look like without my makeup on. Come over to my house when it's not clean. My doors are open. And it's that kind of leadership that's going to start cultivating the response in the attendees.
Oh, I love that you said that, because a lot of the time I'm having these conversations where people are finding a challenge in understanding that they're a leader. And I know that there's different seasons and there's different levels of leadership, but I'm a huge advocate and I'm a big believer that everybody's a leader. We just have to develop it, and might start out small. But I love how maybe somebody needs to hear this. It can start with authenticity, and you being authentic with one other person that creates the environment for you to be a leader.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're right. I'm just processing what you're saying there about everybody is a leader, whether, and in the Momco, the way that it's formatted, it does naturally bring out different levels of leadership. So the way that it happens is oftentimes, not always, every Momco group is different, but oftentimes the women are sitting at tables and there will be a leader at the table, and her job is to facilitate conversation and to be the one in touch with the girls there. And there may be a girl within that table who's in charge of being the one to call people who miss, or being the one who brings snack or whatever. And then you're going to have greater leaders and greater leaders. And there's this concentric circles of leadership that are happening. So there is but yeah, like even just me going in, being an attendee and being authentic with somebody else and allowing them the space to tell me, some of their skeletons in their closet, that does start to create a leadership role, doesn't it?
It totally does. So I'm curious a little bit, because you started attending Momco as an attendee, and I mean, today you are the global ministries developer, but you didn't just get there overnight. So what drew you into wanting to start volunteering and to evolve with Momco? Because what you're doing is not a task to take lightly, and just would love to hear like why volunteer?
It was a kind of a sneaky thing, I guess. It was just this meandering journey of a little bit more. So I mean, it starts with I'm just a doer anyway. I'm an encourager. I want to help person. I'm a firm believer that if you actually want to make connections and make friendships, you need to serve the coffee. You need to, be a part of what's going on, because just attending, you can be missed. And that just goes to anywhere in life, whether you're going to attending a church service. Well, if you just attend a church service, you might shake somebody's hand at the end when they tell you to, but you may leave not talking to anybody. But if you serve the coffee, you're going to talk to everybody at church. Or it's the same thing if you go to any kind of an event, right? Or any kind of organization. So I started out just attending. Very soon I volunteered they asked me to be the birthday girl. So it was my job to know when everybody's birthday was and bring them a card or a little cake or something for their birthday. And that is my favorite story of leadership, because I think that it's the ask, it's the invite. And I was like, so then going ahead about a year or two later, they asked me to lead a table. And I was sure, number one, I didn't know they knew my name, the leaders, because they were so like these leaders of the group at the time. One of them was a news broadcaster. Like she literally was a news broadcaster, and she was so beautiful and perfect. And the other gal, she also was just, they wore high heel shoes and makeup, and their hair was just done so nicely, and they were perfect moms. And in my opinion, but I just felt like, how does she know my name? And why did she think that I'm leadership material? Wow. But it was the ask, and I couldn't say no because I was so flattered by the ask. I was so flattered by the invitation, but I felt completely inadequate, because at the time, like I asked her, like, do you even know? Like, I won't be very good at this. Like, I can't pray with people out loud. It wasn't my thing at the time. I'm not a great speaker. I'm not all these things. And they're like, no, we really see this in you. We think that you're going to have something to give to these women. And so I became the table leader. Then when they retired as leaders, I felt a little tap on my shoulder from God being like, hey, you. I'm like, no, not me. I can't. And I'm going to go a little bit from faith talk for a second, but I said to God in my conversations with him, like, oh, I can't, because I stutter when I talk and I don't have anything to say and all the things. And then I open my Bible to Exodus. And this is the conversation that Moses is having with God about when God's asking Moses to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. And he's like, but I stutter. He's like, well, I'll give you the words to say. And it was a very similar conversation. So it was a little bit of a funny thing, but I ended up taking that risk and stepping into leadership of that group.
Wow.
And that was a huge area of growth. And then just kept going from there. When I finished, well, I led that group for 3 years. Then I took a break, had another baby. Then I went back, and my kids were becoming a little bit older. And at that time, we had separated mothers of preschoolers from mothers of school-age children.
Okay. So
I started a second group for mothers of school-age children. And so then I led that one for a few years. And then finally, after that journey of leadership, I said, I feel like I'm finished with my day-to-day leadership of an actual group. I'd like to find a different expression of my love of this ministry. So that's when I started volunteering for our national team to support groups. So no longer am I leading an actual group,
Right.
but I'm supporting leaders who are leading groups across Canada. And then, of course, keep going from there. Now I lead the team that supports the groups that support the leaders. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. And thank you for your transparency, by the way. Um, Quick note, you're talking about the stuttering part. Two episodes ago, actually, I had my pastor, Tim Sasink, on the podcast, and actually one of his biggest struggles has been disfluency. And it's amazing to see how he has, broken through that, and he preaches, and the authenticity of how he has done that. God could use that. And I just
Mhm.
love how you were able to break through that, and look at you now and how God has used that, right? And so
Well, if you
uh
use it and you circle back to the conversation about authenticity, that was precisely what my conversation with God was about, was that because I said, I'm not going to be like them. I don't fit in their pretty little shoes. Like, you
mm,
talk about walking in somebody else's shoes. I'm like, they don't fit me. I wear running shoes and ball caps. That's that's who I
right,
am, in jeans. And he's like, yeah, but we need this is as a. I said in my thoughts, I said it. It's just going to have hearts drawn all over it and doodles all over it. It's going to be so much messier than it's
right.
been, and in my creativity, and that's exactly what our group needed, because it went from one thing and
Mm,
became something else. And so then as it grew with
right.
just a difference in leadership and a different style of leadership, and then where it went after me was really beautiful to watch, kind of the journey
Mm.
that it took. So it wasn't, God was just working through me to add a different spice to the group.
And what I love about that, right? Like the group grows, the whatever project we're working on, the organization grows, but you're growing too.
Mhm.
And yes, sometimes you head in a different direction, but I love this idea of come as you are. Like we don't we play this comparison game, right? Where we try to be like other people, and it's like no, like you bring your own strength and own skill sets, and we actually need you. We don't need to have a copycat, right? Like,
We had
um,
that, but now we need something new. And
yeah,
what I have to offer and what my gifts and strengths are is
yeah.
actually really valuable to where we're going and can be
Yeah.
used in a different way.
Oh, so true. So true. There's something to be said here too about taking one step at a time. I mean, you attended and you were participating. Then there was that invite to lead something small that ended up developing. There were building blocks along the way, and so I would love to, because I think you're an example of this. Why do you think leadership development is important? And I mean,
Mm.
I know it can look different in different arenas, but even on the small scale, there was leadership development going on with you and growth as you were, you got started and where you're at now.
Well, I actually think as a leader, so when I became coordinator, I suppose,
Hmm.
that my job at that point became facilitating and making sure that everything was happening, the things that needed to happen, that
Right.
the coffee was being made, that the topics were being done, that the speakers were all the things. I was facilitating that was happening, but my most important job was to developing the leaders behind me,
Mm,
because my thing as a leader, and I say this all the time, is that a group should never end with you as a leader. That your main job, your biggest job, is to be preparing for your exit, and
right.
your exit might not be next week or next year. It might be in 10 years. You don't know. But
Right.
even now, even the first thing I'm doing, I've only recently stepped into the role as GMD for Canada. But
Okay.
the first thing that I'm doing is starting to look for
Mm,
who is going to be coming up, and numbers of people who could be potential to come up into this role as we're moving forward. Because because that is your whole job. So I think that leadership,
mm,
mentorship and leadership training is
yep.
the most important, most important part of being a leader, because nobody feels ready for it, you
Mm.
know, steps behind. You need to be kind of brought up into it, and there needs to be a mentorship into that, I think.
And that's such a beautiful thing too, because you're forward thinking, with the end in mind and whatever that could be. But it also starts breaking down these walls of you feeling threatened that somebody's going to come and take your job. And if you're growing as a leader, you don't feel threatened. In fact, you want to empower others. And if they're coming in because you've trained them, coached them, mentored them, and they're being better because of the, the wisdom you passed on, you're also growing in that process, and you're not preparing yourself to enter a new world, a new arena of opportunities.
Exactly. You'll just pigeonhole yourself to never be able to do anything else. If I work myself into a position where only I can do this job, and maybe I feel arrogant about that or prideful about that I'm so good at my job that nobody else can do it.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? That's the only job you're ever going to do.
Yeah. Right.
You need to be, sharing the load a little bit and mentoring people into that. So that gives you room ahead of you to move into the cool things that are coming up, or something different. Maybe you don't want to do this. And in a volunteer position compared to a paid job, I would say that it's very important in a real job too, like a paid position. When you're in a position of leadership, that you should always be working at who's going to be behind you, because you want to be able to move up in your job. But we have the luxury in volunteer work that maybe I'm working for MOPS, for 20 years, but maybe I actually have a passion for something else, and I can use my skills and go and do something else. And I don't have to worry about, because actually I said MOPS, MOMCO. The MOMCO is not Taya's group. The MOMCO at St. Albert Alliance Church was not Taya's group. The MOMCO Canada is not Taya's group either. It needs to be something that's going to last a whole lot longer than me. Yeah.
That's it right there, right? It's bigger than you, and you can't be the cap. You can't be the leader that ends up capping the organization because of whatever it is, your insecurities, possibly lack of vision, this idea that you don't want people to come from behind you and take your position. There's a lot there, but I love that visual of like, this is bigger than you, and lead like that, and it's a good thing. It's a really good thing.
Yeah, I really agree. Yeah.
So on that note about volunteering, because leadership applies across the board, and I think those in the marketplace and business do need to grasp this, because sometimes in that arena we can get stuck in boxes more. But I think we can learn a lot from volunteering, and I brought that up a couple times now. But why do you think volunteering is such a powerful idea? I mean, there is a lot of volunteering power behind MOMCO.
There really is. We are, yes, individual groups are led by volunteers. The next we have volunteers all the way up until the very top. So definitely led by volunteers. Why do I think volunteering is important? Well, I mean, my job that I work at, that I get paid for, I teach voice lessons one-on-one. I would not really have, it is my nature to want to do more. And when I was working in a business, I was even offered actually to start a new location and be the boss of that business, which I declined at that time, but wasn't the path for me. But there's not a lot of opportunity in my line of work for leadership growth and all those kinds of things. So I see with volunteering that there is opportunity to have personal growth and development that actually affects me in all parts of my life. And I can use that even with my children and my parenting and all the rest of it. So I think there's just so much that you can, you receive. I always find with volunteering, you're receiving far more than what you're giving. And we only count the cost maybe of what we're giving, the time that we're giving, or the financial cost of what we're giving. But once you start on that journey, you realize that, well, you just keep going, because it's, I don't want to use the word addictive, but it's fulfilling is the word that I need to be using. It's reaching places in me that want to help, that want to connect, that want to see success, that want to see good things happen. And yeah, I definitely get that with volunteering.
Yeah, I think that if there's somebody listening who hasn't activated in volunteering, I think they're really ripping themselves off, because they're missing out on entering this arena of experiencing the life-giving experience that comes with that, right? And I've done, a decent amount of volunteering in my time, and I still do today. And it's always funny. You kind of start out small, and I love the idea of impact, and if it's life-giving, if it's important to you, you make the time. But I just don't think it's ever the time is never wasted, and you just never know the ripple effect of that impact. And I don't know if we will ever fully see it, but there is a time and place where we do get the privilege to see some of that growth, and what it's so
Absolutely. I
rewarding.
actually had a really, really neat experience. So when I finished the first time I led the first group, and then there was a space, I came back into that group and did a lower position. So I just was doing creative activities, and we went to a retreat. And so this is a whole new team of people than from when I left. But those people were attendees when I was leaving. It's just a few years difference. So we did, part of our activity during this retreat was a life map.
Okay.
And so each of us drew a life map and kind of significant events that happened in our life. And then, of course, the pivot point and the trajectory. So as each of these 8 women were explaining their life map, and they all had different experiences leading up to becoming a mother, then they became a mother. Then they went to MOPS, we called it at the time. Then I found MOPS. And then my spiritual life took off, my friendship life took off, and so God gave me this glimpse, and I get shivers even just thinking about it. It brought me to tears. It was like these women, I got to see a little bit of what the ripple effect was from the work that I was doing, some of the fruit of the labor that I was doing. And it was so empowering to me as a leader, because we don't always see that. And I when I left the group the first time, I was over it. I was burnt out a little bit. I was done, because there's a lot of, personal things that happen with women working together, and you don't feel super always appreciated. You feel like you're putting a lot in and not getting much. You get kind of negative for a little bit, and I was experiencing a little bit of that fatigue. But to hear that, what I thought that it was almost like yelling into a storm, like nobody could hear me. Nobody could hear me. I wasn't impacting anything. I was just, but to hear that the kinds of impact that was there, I'll never forget that, because that doesn't have to be even because I was coordinator. That could have been because I attended the group and I was kind to somebody, or
Wow.
It's just a really neat thing.
It is a neat thing, and maybe that's an encouragement for people to think about these life map concept, visualize that, write it down, because when you see these points in life that have led you to this, and I mean, there's a lot of, let's be for real, a lot of crap that happens in life, and sometimes that takes up our energy, and we're focusing on that, and we forget that actually, no, there's space here to be grateful and realize that actually all of this mess and good things and everything kind of combined together has made me who I am today and put me on another trajectory here.
Absolutely.
I like that visual.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a really neat experience. It really was. Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. So I'm kind of curious here, because I mean, you've already told us quite a bit in how this whole Momco works and everything, but do you think there's something that kind of sticks out to you that that gives credit to why Momco is being so successful? Like, is there something that kind of is highlighted for you that goes, I think we're doing this right?
Well, I think it comes down to community first.
Okay.
I think that compared to other moms groups, because there's lots of moms groups out there, and they are successful, and bringing women together in the season of motherhood automatically connects them. But do those friendships last a lifetime? I don't know. But in the Momco, we're talking the way that we come together, we do something fun to break, we call it icebreaker, right? We break the ice and we do something that gets people kind of out of their comfort zone and laughing and having fun together. And then we have maybe a serious topic that's going to make you feel a little vulnerable. And then we have questions about that. We have discussion time with the moms being able to discuss with each other. And I think that those friendships are really cultivated through that. And I think that the more a woman feels, this is the success of, it's word of mouth success of Momco, the more a woman feels at home in her group and fueled by and fed by this group, then the more she's going to invite her friends, and the more she's going to invite that mom from school and all those things. So it really is kind of a word of mouth thing that grows it.
Wow, that's so cool. It's so true. Hey, when you have something that's working, you can't even stop it from growing. It creates, like we're saying, that snowball effect, ripple effect.
Absolutely. What I think is really interesting is that what we're experiencing, and we talked a little bit before we came on camera, we talked a little bit about the
Yeah.
differences between Canada and the US that
Right.
we're working with. But what's really interesting is that moms in Canada, moms in the United States, moms in Ghana are doing the same curriculum.
Mm.
And they're sitting and doing crafts together, and they're sitting and having food together, and they're looking after each other's children, and they're supporting each other. And so it doesn't matter if you are in a mud hut or if you are in a sky rise. It doesn't
Mm.
matter, because moms are moms. And it's really, really cool to see that across the globe. And that's, I think, part of the success too with the Mom Co. is just reaching moms where they're at.
I love that. Oh, that's such a beautiful thing. So, and maybe you already touched on this in what you just shared, but like, what do you think you're learning right now as a leader, being part of such a big organization? And it seems like community is a big part of that, that you're really seeing globally. But is there something else that kind of sticks out to you that you're going, okay, as a leader right now, this is a big thing that I'm learning from Momco?
Yeah, I read this question in advance, and I felt a little challenged by it, because I'm kind of a person who I reflect and I can see what I learned in former seasons. It's
Okay.
easy to see behind you and like, okay, I see what happened there. That was really cool. The way I grew from here to there, the way
Right.
God grew me from somebody who didn't feel like they could speak. Like, I'm a singer.
Right.
I sing on stage in front of thousands of people, but to speak was a different thing. So I grew into somebody who is able to do something like this and not feel anxious at all about that. So I can
Hmm.
see where God's grown me. But what am I learning right now? That is an interesting question that I'll be able to answer you in future. However, I mean, some of the things that I'm being called to do right now that are challenging for me,
Yeah.
I think I'm going to have to, I've been avoiding this, but I think I'm going to have to start doing things like cold calls.
Okay.
And that terrifies me, to have to call, a church in Vancouver that I've never met and say,
Mm.
"Hey, let me tell you about the Mom Co."
Right.
And not be a salesperson. Like, I feel like that's going to be really challenging for me,
Right.
but I already feel that that's going to be where I'm going next. And also,
Yeah.
some of the conversations that I'm going to have to advocate for Canada to the Mom Co. for different things and different differences.
Right.
That's going to be a new thing that I've not had to do before,
Mm.
to try to be a good storyteller so that I can be articulate in
Right.
expressing our differences here and our needs here and how we can grow here in Canada to a way that's going to be received by
Mm.
our people above us. Yeah.
Wow, I love it. I love how, and it can be a difficult question to answer at times, but you're having the self-awareness that you do have to stretch yourself, and you are stretching, and you're doing a few things that are going to make you feel uncomfortable, but that is part of your leadership, and I love that you're embracing that and you're at least aware of it, so you can start pushing towards that, right? And
I am
um
a firm believer that growth does not happen in your comfort zone. That if you only stay within your comfort zone, you will always stay the same. So we do have to step out and do something that makes us feel uncomfortable. And it does become more comfortable the more times you do it,
yeah.
but it's hard.
Well, I could imagine. I mean, you sing in front of thousands of people, like you just mentioned, and I mean, some people are afraid to even talk to two people. Like you, obviously, worked your way through that, and that is not something lightly to just. Well, first of all, the fact that you can sing and amazingly is great, and then perform it is another thing. So it's cool because you've already done that in other aspects of your life, and now it's just pivoting into this arena, right?
Right. And it's so funny how different singing is from talking.
Yeah.
And it really is like
Mm.
singing. I am far more confident in my ability to sing than in my ability to talk. I feel like sometimes I trip over my words or I say things wrong, or I'm a verbal processor. So things come out of my mouth before I think them while I'm saying them. And then like, ooh, put that back. Like that was supposed to be
Rewind.
yeah, rewind that. Can we just pause it? Can we edit that out? Because yeah, and that has happened
Right.
over time, and you just, what it is though is practice.
Yeah.
Why am I more comfortable singing? Because I've been doing it for 30 years.
Mm.
Um, if and I do it all the time. But the first time I sang on stage, I cried before and after. And that was, yeah. So we just have to keep doing it. We do it regularly. So same thing with leadership, same thing with public speaking,
Yep.
and everything. Yeah.
Hey, on a side note, I have a hunch that you're going to do great as you start reaching out to these churches. I think you're passionate, and believe what Momco stands for, and because you know that it can change lives, and because it changed yours, I don't think you're ever going to sell people. I think that conversation is just going to flow, and you're going to have some great impact. So I'm excited for you.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want, as I go, I want people just to see the heart of what we're doing and not something that's salesy, because we're not that. I'm not making any money on this, and neither actually is the Momco making. No one's profiting off of this. This is just merely, we want all moms in Canada to have access to a group. That's our prayer, and that's a big prayer because we have a really large country that with very, very spread out locations. So,
hey, so on that note, with that passion that you want, Momco to be known and spread, are you seeing some challenges right now with moms? Like, are moms facing a specific type of challenge that's very obvious to you that makes you driven to share Momco?
Absolutely. And I had mentioned a little bit earlier about moms being isolated, and the way that I was isolated when I had my babies is totally different from the way that moms are isolated now. And because that's the difference in social media. We didn't have social media when I had babies. My babies are 20. So now we have these phones and our social media. And so we think we're connected. We don't actually realize how disconnected we are. And I think the more that we go into being connected through social media, the more disconnected we get. And so the Momco is offering a space for moms to really connect authentically rather than merely through pictures of my perfect life on Instagram that you're going to scroll past and maybe put a little thumbs up. No, we want to have conversations. We want to have, real connection, a face-to-face connection, and hand-to-hand and hugging connections. So, which has been a challenge over the past, the pandemic, that became a real challenge for the Momco to do our jobs well. But yeah, I feel like today's mom. The other thing is that we do find in people who are in church community are more used to, when somebody in the church family, in the church community has a baby, everybody brings meals over and everybody takes, helps you do your laundry. And that's the community that you have within the church. But I think that a lot of Canadian moms are not experiencing that community because we don't have, and I'm learning this as I'm researching, the amount of, I think the stat that I found, don't quote me because I'm really bad with numbers, but 21% of people in Canada are actually identifying as a church member, like going to church regularly. So that means 80% potentially of women. And this generation coming up is such a fast declining, this post-Christian society where people know about God, but just don't buy in or whatever, or not interested in it. It's difficult. So they're missing out on that community potentially that they may not have, or we maybe had it built in if you were attending a church when you had babies. So I feel like that. Yeah, I feel like there is a lot of isolation that happens with moms.
Wow.
The Momco, I think it's just more and more needed as we go.
Yeah, I agree. I think I love what you guys are doing and the heart behind that. So here, let's do something. If we have moms listening to this episode right now, if you could talk to them directly, what would you like to say to them? Is there an encouragement or piece of advice? Like, what would you say to them coming from Taya?
Oh, yeah. Wow. I guess I would want to say that no mom should be alone, that we don't need to be alone, that there is support for you. There is friendship for you. There are mentors for you, mentor moms that can come and hold your baby for you, or babysit your children if you're not close to your own family. There are people in your community who want to do that. And so I just hope that all moms can get connected into something like the Momco. There are other things available as well, with or without the faith-based component, but I strongly stand behind the Momco, and you should check and see if there's one in your area, and if there isn't, talk to me about it.
Yeah.
or to, maybe you can start one in your own area if you attend a
Mm.
church, and you can ask your church if they can start one, because it's just such a life-giving opportunity.
Ah, I love it. Um, Sometimes we believe this lie that being alone is the best thing to do to isolate ourselves. And the reality is that no, I really believe that we were created to be in community, and I love that encouragement you just gave out, because it's so true. We have to step out and reach out, and I I know that maybe we've had some bad experiences in community. We've all probably can come up with something, but that doesn't have to spoil the rest of the fruit. That doesn't have to.
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head about lies that we believe. And I think that
Mhm.
this is true whether you're coming at it from a faith-based perspective or just a worldly perspective, that we
Yep,
do believe lies. And
yep,
one of the most terrible lies that we can believe is that what we're experiencing, that we're the only one who experiences that.
yep.
So, and then we stay in shame, right?
Yes.
So
Yep.
for me personally, when my babies, well, not babies, but my toddlers and young children were small, and I talk about this all the time with moms groups, I experienced some mommy rage where I was kind of yelling and being, a little rough with the kids and stuff, and not my best self and not my most positive self, because I'm actually a really positive, happy, calm
Mhm.
kind of a person, and I was not my best self at that time, and but I was so shameful about that and so embarrassed, that I didn't talk about it. So with mops at the time, I'll still say mops because that's what we called it then.
Yeah.
um, One day we were talking about some kind of skeletons in your closet or something, whatever the topic was. And I'm like, I yell at my kids. And the mom's like, yeah, like we all yell at your kids. I'm like, no, I really yell at my kids. I'm like, yeah, me too. It's terrible. And so we got to talk about it. And then once it's out in the open, you're like, me too, me too, me too. Everybody was me too, me too. Sometimes I lose my
Mm.
junk with my kids. Sometimes
Yeah.
I say things to my kids I don't want to or whatever.
Yeah.
There was that release of the shame. And once the
Yeah.
shame was released, the healing could start and the proactive could start and the support from each other. So how are you doing? Check in. How are you feeling? And then change can happen. And that
Oh.
is not a reality that I live now and haven't since my kids were 5. Um, but yeah, it was huge growth and healing. And that was only because of what I experienced through those moments in the mom code. Not saying those moments couldn't happen elsewhere, just saying
No.
that facilitated my growth and healing there. But yeah, that Me Too thing, that being able to go somewhere and say, hey, jokingly, of course, I just wanted to put my baby in the garbage today. It was so bad. He cried so much today. I just want to throw him out the window. And then somebody else would laugh and not call CPS. I mean, that, because we understand it's like, I know, obviously you're not throwing your baby in the garbage, but you
No.
felt overwhelmed in motherhood, and somebody else can say, yeah, me too. Or I get that. That was me last week. Here's some things that help me, or whatever. Let me hug you.
Mm.
Let me get your coffee for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the thing too, right? When we're isolating, we believe that we're the worst human beings. If we are swimming in that in whatever that is, we
Mhm.
think that we're the worst, we're the only ones. And I love how community creates the opportunity for healing. I mean, I actually do believe, and I think you would agree that healing happens in community, and
Absolutely.
and it's cool that Momco is creating environments. I would even go as far as to say that safe places, as you build relationships, to be able to be yourself and say, "Hey, no, I actually um, yell at my kids," like you're saying,
Yeah.
right? And to be honest, and then you realize, oh, actually, I'm not the only one in the room that does that. Okay, I don't feel as like a
But
horrible human being.
yeah, but if I was to say that on my social media, mom's page that I'm on, I'm going to have 150 people tell me that I'm doing it wrong or that I'm a
Yeah.
terrible, despicable person. So that is not the place for vulnerability
Yes.
necessarily. That the place for vulnerability is with one-on-one, like not
Yeah.
one-on-one, but small group,
Yeah.
eye to eye connection.
Yeah.
But I mean, the other thing too, I think if you bring it back to leadership, that we believe lies about ourselves as leaders as well. The
Mhm.
lies that I believed, that I was not going to be an effective leader. You
Yeah.
think way back to, 26-year-old Taya stepping into leadership with a 2-year-old and a
Right.
4-year-old.
Mm.
Um, stepping into leadership of that group and thinking, I can't do this. I don't speak well with people. I don't have anything to offer. I'm not organized enough to do this. All the lies I believe about myself. Yeah, I am disorganized. But you know what? My creativity and
Yeah.
my vision and my authenticity can bring fruit out of leadership as well. And I've grown. So yeah, I think it's really great to be able to look at those lies and say, you know what? I'm gonna put myself out there. I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna be authentic, and I'm gonna learn by my mistakes.
Yes.
And yeah.
And I love that 26-year-old Taya didn't know where she was going to end up today. And sometimes as leaders, we need to remember that. Stop trying to figure out the whole picture. I mean, there's something to be said about having vision, making some plans, and doing your due diligence and being wise that way. But guys guys and gals, we don't know the future. But when you step out and you take it one step at a time, and you invest in yourself and grow and develop, oh my goodness, that you just never know where you end up. One day you wake up and going, wow, this
Yeah.
is not what I signed up for, but I love it and I'm enjoying life,
If
right?
somebody offers you to do this job, if you're in just a worker at work, and your boss comes to you and says, hey, can you lead the social committee and plan some luncheons and stuff for us? You say yes. Because this is a place for you to grow as an individual. It's a place for you to make connections with your people at work. And it's a place for you to get noticed. And then be built into, they wouldn't ask you if they didn't see that you had potential to do more. Or cross training. If your boss says, hey, I'd like to cross train you in this other job so that when they go on vacation, you can do it for them. Do it. Like, just keep taking those opportunities as you see them.
Yes, I love that.
And do that for your staff. If you are a leader, do that for the people under you as well. Give them opportunity to grow, an opportunity to take small little bits of leadership so that they can grow into leaders as well.
Thank you for saying that. Yes, we have to then pursue opportunities and say yes. But if you are a leader, maybe this is an opportunity to reflect and have a timeout and going, what am I doing for my team, my people? Am I presenting those opportunities for them so that they can actually have opportunities to grow?
Absolutely. And I was thinking about this morning as I was reflecting, and I think about it often about when I first led the first year and became the coordinator for the group the first year and was leading the team for the first time.
Right.
And the meetings went a little bit like this. Now, we had somebody who did hospitality, which was like creative activities and things. Okay. We had somebody who ran the children's stuff. We had somebody who, all the different people, but we'd have the group. And I would say, hey, we're going to have, this is going to be our topic. And we need these elements. And don't worry, I got that. Oh, don't worry. You don't have to do that. I never wanted to put anybody out and assign them. So they never got to do their job. I did all the work. They came and they just nodded their head at the meeting, and that was kind of it. And so consequently, what happened was the next year, none of those people signed up for leadership. Okay. And I had to reflect on that. I'm like, what did I do? And what I did was kind of undermine their value by not giving them anything to do, by in my trying to protect them and trying not to put them out. I actually just made leadership not life-giving for them. They actually want to do things.
Right.
So that I had to learn how to value my staff. I'll call it staff, but it's not, because it's volunteer work, but my people who I'm leading, that I need to value their skills. I need to give them a place to be valuable within the team and allow them the freedom to do the work. Even if it wouldn't be the way that I would do it, even if the centerpiece looks like this instead of that, I need to make sure that they have the creative license to do that and be okay with it.
I'm so glad you said that, because I heard somebody say, it's not just about delegating tasks, it's about delegating responsibilities. And when you delegate responsibility, you are empowering them. And maybe another way to say it is delegating decision-making and allowing them to do it differently in the way that they could do it best. And what a gift of leadership that would be. And that is when individuals start leaning into that, and they can blow your mind away. They might not have done it the way you would like, but they might actually even do it better.
They might, or even if you don't think it's better, somebody else might think it's better, because
that's true.
It's subjective. But I think that as a leader, I think that when you're going in, it's important to have a clear direction of where you're going and what the overall view of everything is going to be and what the steps are going to be, but then be really open to the addition of other people's ideas as well. And it's a little bit of a balance because we can overdo it one way, but we can also overdo it the other way where we go in and have no idea what we're doing and no direction. And that makes you look like you're not confident. You need to be confident, yet cultivating other people's ideas as well.
Oh, so good. That's why I like to say, leadership is a science and an art. There's a science behind it because there is principles that apply. There's things that do make the framework of what we're doing, but it's an art because we're dealing with people. There's things that don't go as planned. There's different ways of doing things, and we have to hold it. We have to hold it loosely with open hands, so we can actually create something beautiful.
With the forward thinking that this project is not the only project.
Yeah.
And this project is not the end of the journey. So we want these people to take projects beyond my leadership. We want these people to become the leaders. We want, that's always going to be a part of what we're doing and how we're going to cultivate that with our leaders.
Mm-hmm. I really want to point out something, because if somebody's listening to this and this whole conversation about leadership, I think in this conversation, not that you need our permission, but if you were looking for that leadership has different ways of presenting itself. And it's not only the people at the top. It's not if you have this humongous responsibility or depending on your capacity. Like, leadership can start simply by saying yes to an opportunity to serve in a really small way, because that could be the seed that gets planted that then carries you on to who knows what.
Totally. It's not unlike parenting. And I always think in my home, I am a leader in my home and leading these young people. But when kids were, around 10 years old, and I was thinking about boundaries for them as, where are they going to go on their bikes? How are they going to be left home alone? And I was thinking, when they're 12 years old, they're going to be allowed to be left home alone with somebody else's children. Yep. So I have to figure out how to get them there. And then when they're 14 years old, they're going to have to drive my car. So how am I going to go from 10 years old? How am I going to prepare them for the responsibility of driving my car?
Yes.
So let's look ahead and say, okay, well, I need to give them jobs at home. I need to give them we're going to start leaving for 15 minutes. Then we're going to leave for 30 minutes. Then we're going to leave, but not with your sibling there, just you by yourself. And we're going to come and check in, and we're going to check in and see how it was. And I think that leadership is like that, whether it be in parenting or whether it be in a different way with adults,
Yes, that is so true. And I love how a couple times in this conversation you've pointed out about having that vision, starting with the end in mind. We do need to have an idea where we're heading and allow everything else to then get navigated along the way. It's a journey. Right? And so,
well, I'm going to bring that real quick because I know that we're going to run out of time. But one of the things I most love about leadership, and that's because of my personality, and it's interesting, it's about understanding the personalities of the people you're leading. Ooh. So I find this to be so important to a team. So we just did this a couple of months ago, with my Momco Canada team. And I have done this with every team I've ever led, is we do these leadership or these personality quiz. And I want to know how you think. I want to know what motivates my team. I want to know how to speak to them in a way that they hear, in a way that they're not offended, or they're not, because I know how I am. And I know that can rub some certain personalities the wrong way, So I love, because I'm a creative person, I really love the leading from your strengths, a model with the four quadrants of golden retriever, beaver, lion, and otter. And I am an otter. And that's what that means, is that my strengths come with creativity and spontaneity, and, I'm an encourager. I'm excited about things. All those kinds of things. And I call it counterbalances, because every strength has a counterbalance.
Yep.
And I can only be these things, and I also have these things, and that's okay. So organization's not my strongest thing. I work really hard at organization. I can't say that I'm terrible at it, but I don't come naturally to that. Punctuality. I'm a big thinker with little follow through sometimes. I just want to give you the idea. You run with it. I'm just going to tell you what it is.
Yeah.
So anyway, but if I have somebody on my team who is what we call the beaver, which is going to be the really analytical, logical thinker, the planner who wants to, we can really rub against each other a little bit in that can be very difficult because they're going to think that I'm disorganized and I'm going to think that they're rigid.
Right.
And then maybe they are, and maybe I am, but maybe there's a way that we can come together. And I actually, after years and years and years of exploring this, I actually surround myself with that personality now. And I'm very authentic about this is where, I need people like this in my life to keep me on track.
Yeah.
To write things in the planner for me. But, like we together, all of the personalities together are what's going to make us a strong team, but only if we can communicate with each other and value each other's strengths.
Yep.
So there was a time where we usually have pairs of coordinators. There's me and my girlfriend, who we were not friends at that time. We didn't know each other very well. And I am this personality. She is the beaver personality. And we're discussing an event that we're going to be hosting. And there's going to be a lot of different speakers coming in and being in different spots in the church. And we're doing a spa day is what it was. Okay. And so the detail about where are these people going to set their stuff up? This is weeks in advance. And I'm like, well, we'll just find out when they get here. We'll just put them here or there. And she's like, no, that's not going to work. We have to know in advance what's going to happen. I'm like, well, why? Because it's just going to work out. Like there's lots of places in the church to have them. It'll be fine. And she's like, no, we need to plan it out. And so we locked horns. We got a little heated, a little bit, passionate about our differences there. And there was even some hard feelings for a while. And we're actually really good friends now. She's coming over for dinner tonight, to be honest. And it's because this is we're talking 15 years ago. Wow. But it really came down to understanding why that was important to her versus why. It's not it's not because I don't care. It's because it's just how I'm wired, that I'm spontaneous and I'm okay with it. But actually, the event was a success because she did plan out where they were going to be. And the event was a success because it was creative and fun. And, it took both of us to make it happen. So we just, with your team, I think that is so valuable for communication to understand how everybody thinks and value their strengths. What are they bringing to the table? Yes. What are their talents and strengths and abilities? And then how can you communicate to get the most out of that? And so stop asking your beaver to plan the creative activities or whatever. You stop asking them to beautify the page or whatever you need to do, or to be the one to speak. Maybe they're not the one to speak, but they're maybe the one who can get all the key points together so that somebody else can deliver whatever it is. But just use people's strengths and be able to communicate effectively with them so they can hear you.
Wow. I love that. That is, you mic drop there. That is such an important thing to keep on mind because everybody brings something to the table. And in learning how to work together, these strengths, these different personalities, there's a lot out there that can really just flourish a team. And teamwork, we hear that, right? It's a fun quote, teamwork makes the dream work, but it's so true though. Like
so true,
right?
That we all have something to add, and that every one of those 4 quadrants can be the leader.
Yes.
But they're going to lead differently. And so if you are, for me, I'm an otter. If I'm going to have a lion personality on my team, that person's going to be, they're more of a natural leader, potentially. They might have strong opinions. They might be very brash about saying those opinions. And I have a bit of a sensitive heart. I have that golden retriever streak through me that my first response might be to be offended by that person. Right. And so now I need to look now and say, hey, was that actually offensive, or am I just being offended? Right. And then I can look and say, no, actually, they weren't being offensive at all. They were just being, direct. And the directness, because it wasn't candy coated, there wasn't enough smiley faces after it, actually rubbed me the wrong way. So I need to unpack. That's actually me. That's a me issue, not a them issue. Right. And I can respect that they, that maybe what they said wasn't their strong opinion. It just was something they said. So I just think it's really important to understand people.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you've given us so much, and I've loved this conversation. I'm wondering if you have a favorite leadership advice that somebody's given to you, or something that you've learned that you think everybody should hear and apply.
Oh man. My favorite definitely is what we just talked about.
Yeah.
And I don't know if, I guess it was advice because it was something that it was a leadership course that I took through our church, and our pastor kind of led us through that. But I think, yeah, for me, I'm not even sure if they're quotes that I have heard or if it's just things that work for me or quotes that I've made up. I don't know. But definitely when you're leading, always be looking who's coming up behind you and be mentoring people behind you. That's number one.
Yeah.
To be super aware of the people who you're leading with and who you were leading with, like who you were bringing with you.
Yeah.
And to be authentic, to be authentically you, to be vulnerable, to be open to criticism, but for growth, to be open for growth,
Mm,
to be open to accept the places where maybe you're not excelling,
right.
and to reflect personally. But those, yeah, it's not a specific leadership quote, but it's
No.
definitely some nuggets that I keep with me that I remind
Yeah.
myself of. You know what? You're not good at everything,
Yep.
and you do have places to grow, and you did kind of mess up there. So it's okay to be called out. Nobody
Yeah.
dislikes you. Maybe they do. It's okay. But like
Yeah.
this is not your value as a human. It's just where you're going. It's fine.
So good. So good. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love that. So I love to ask my guests, because you are on the It Matters podcast, and would love to know what matters to you right now. Is there something that really gets highlighted in the season of life you're in, but what matters to you?
What matters to me right now is motherhood.
Okay.
That is my greatest calling,
Mm,
beyond everything else. And what matters most in all, including motherhood, including my marriage, if you just overall, is connection. Connection is
mm,
what is most important. So facilitating connection from others, but also having connection with other people and sharing emotion, whether that be as an artist, sharing emotion with other people. That's my whole job as an artist, is
yeah.
to actually make you feel something and to share and connect that way. And then connect in conversation, to connect with students, to offer a place
Hmm.
for them to tell me stuff, all the teenagers coming in and telling me this stuff. But yeah, connection.
I love that you said that, because in my personal opinion, in this whole conversation, in our time together, I think it's very evident that that is what matters to you, and it just flows out of you. And so this has been a beautiful time. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences, your wisdom, your heart. It has really come out, and I would really love people to connect with you. How can they find you? What do they need to do to connect with you?
Great. So you can connect with me just by a simple email straight to my Momco inbox, which would be taya.mopscanadamc
Okay.
at gmail.com. We can link that somewhere.
Yep.
You can also just Google search mom, like MOPS, or the Momco. The website for the Momco
Hmm.
is www.themom.co.
Cool.
That's all it is. So you can look for us there, and you can ask to connect with Canada, and they will connect you to me as well.
Awesome. Awesome. And yeah, and we'll definitely share that information in the notes.
We're on
Uh,
Facebook. We're on Instagram. Yeah, you can message us there too.
cool.
Yeah.
Well, this is awesome. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us today, and just being your authentic self, and just bringing so much awesome wisdom. I've really appreciated this conversation.
Thanks so much, Walter.
For sure. All right, everybody. This is the conclusion of our episode, but I hope you really enjoyed it. If you think there's somebody that needs to hear this, please comment, please share it, please invite people to hear this episode. This has been such a fruitful conversation, and I hope it adds value to you. So until next time, remember to dream big, grow always, and lead well. Till next time, guys.